Hi, I'm Tinny from Mini Bowl Design. This is probably my last video today. I'm over 800. I'm working on 900. Figure it'll be just a kick from 900 to 1,000. Hey, I'm working at it. I want to talk some more about the stoves over the years as I build them. I believe I left off last time somewhere around the sieve. From there, I started getting real creative. I'm not sure where the sketty fell in. The sketty was a big stove. I actually made a sketty sieve. Made like 3 of them for a guy in Florida, I think. Put them in some kind of survival kits. They were like this tall and this big around. And they held like 8 ounces of alcohol. And you could basically take a 10-inch cast iron frying pan and cook steak with them. They burned, I think on 8 ounces, they burned like 35 minutes, something like that, 45 minutes. Anyway, I did that, and I eventually decided to go into wick stoves. I had noticed how well the wick burned the alcohol on the primer wick on the stove, and I thought, boy, if it burns that well just being wet down, how would it burn if it actually had its feet in alcohol all the time? So I did some experimentation with some really small ones and found out that it burned a lot like a kerosene lantern, nice, clean, bright flame. So I started out building them. I think the first one I built was Solo, which was a ridiculously tiny little, tiny thing, and I did the Duo, which was because I didn't have, have anything to go any bigger. It was just two Solos side by side, a neat little stove. Some people still have them. I see one every now and then. And I can't remember where I went from there, but I kept goofing around. I ended up getting into the voodoo thing with even bigger, with the legs and the pot stands and all that. And that was cool. But they didn't produce that much heat. And the big drawback to them was that I was using fiberglass wick, and it was fine as long as it was wet with alcohol. But if you ran it out of alcohol, the fiberglass would melt and turn to glass and ruin the wick. Wouldn't do it right away, but if you ran it out 4 or 5 times, you had to change the wicks, and it was a bit of a pain. So after a while, I stumbled on a carbon felt. And that's, I think, roughly in there somewhere. When I went to carbon felt, I went to the bongo, really small, I think called it the stumpy, and then the bongo, and up through to basically where I am now. I'm sure I've got some holes in my story there where I've left things out, but that's basically how it worked out. And when I was doing the wick stoves recently, I started out, this is the part I left out, I started out doing it with soda can stoves. And the problem I ran into was because there was no silicone insulation in them, as they burned, they'd heat up and start boiling the alcohol, and then they'd vent, and you had a towering inferno. So I actually, for lack of any other way to do it, I put them in a water jacket. I can't even remember what those are called, but I'm sure some of you guys know. So anyway, I put them in a water jacket to keep them cool. And eventually I stumbled onto the silicone. And when I did that, that's basically when I jumped over from the really limited thing of doing soda cans and jumped over into building with aluminum. That would be aluminum stock. Started out with like 3/4 inch, and I'm up to 2 inch now. Now, for those of you that don't know about aluminum stock, and aluminum, any kind of metal, when you start talking about that, then you get into machinist lingo. And it's real easy to tell a machinist from a non-machinist. If they're building something and you ask them what they're building it out of, they won't say aluminum or Kaiser aluminum or Kaiser. They'll say, usually, if it's aluminum, they'll say 6061 T6, which is an aircraft aluminum, or 2024, which is a mid-range tempered aluminum, or 2011 T3, which is the very best you can get that aerospace industry uses and even NASA uses for making very small, intricate, high-precision parts that need a good surface finish. And the surface finish, because the parts are odd-shaped or very small, you can't grind them in to get the surface finish. Now, if you don't know what grinding in means, that means you're not a machinist. That's when you take apart, and after you machine it, it's not glassy smooth. You machine it a little bit oversized, and if it calls for a smooth finish, you put it in a jig in a surface grinder, and you grind in the surface on a surface grinder down to the finished dimension. It might be plus or minus, it might just be plus, might just be minus. That's just a machinist thing. And all the other terms like Rockwell and all the other terms, that's all machinist lingo. So for a machinist, as I am, to be talking to people, I can pretty much immediately know a machinist from a non-machinist. It doesn't take a long time, and I'm not much of a machinist. I'm a very low-end machinist. I have a lot of respect for these guys that are master machinists, like a friend of mine, Mike Cahill, which basically taught me everything I know. He was a master machinist, and he was just a little bit more than amazing. Those guys, they're good. You wouldn't believe some of the stuff I've seen him do. He's just good. So anyway, it's not real hard for me to tell a machinist. And if you ask somebody what they make something out of, and they say aluminum, or they give you the brand name of the aluminum, they don't give you the temper number or the alloy, they're probably not a machinist. So, take it for what it's worth. I'm Tinny from Mini Bull Design. Get out and hike, take a friend, enjoy the great outdoors, and more important than anything, have a really great day. Bye-bye.